Okay, so, like, have you ever, like, looked at your bank account and, thought to yourself, like, oh my gosh, could I actually survive, like, a whole day
Right.
in the city with just, like, a single dollar?
It's a question I think a lot of people ask themselves, especially these days,
Right.
Prices are going up everywhere, and
Yeah, exactly.
it's harder and harder to make ends meet.
It is. And so today, in this deep dive, we're going to explore exactly that.
We're going to dive into this hypothetical scenario
I do. You
for
actually
surviving on $1 for 24 hours
survive on just $1 for a whole day
in a city.
in a city. And we're not just talking about, like,
Yeah.
sitting at home all day. We're talking
Right.
about, like, navigating the city, finding food, transportation, all that jazz.
And that's what's so fascinating about this scenario, right?
Yeah.
It forces you to think about resourcefulness in a whole new way.
It does.
Like, what would you prioritize if you only had $1?
Yeah. And how would you even go about meeting those basic needs?
Yeah.
It's almost like a real-world escape room,
Yeah.
but instead of trying to, like, get out of a room,
Right.
you're trying to get through the day.
You're trying to survive the day.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and the thing is, like, this deep dive, it's not just theoretical.
No.
We're actually going to walk you through, like, a story
Yeah.
of someone who attempted this challenge.
Yeah, because it's one thing to talk about it abstractly,
Right.
but to actually see how someone navigates the real-world difficulties,
Yeah.
that's when it really hits home.
Exactly. So let's set the scene, all right?
Yep.
Now, it's 8 a.m. in the morning in a bustling city. The kind where even a cup of coffee can cost you $5.
Mm-hmm.
Our challenger is dropped right in the middle of it all with nothing but a single dollar to their name.
Wow!
Talk about starting the day on hard mode.
Talk about a challenge, right?
Right. And so immediately they're faced with this crucial decision.
Okay.
What do you prioritize when, like, every penny counts?
Yeah,
And for most people, the first thought's going to be food,
of course. Got to
Right.
fuel the body.
right? Your stomach's rumbling. You need energy to, like, tackle the day.
Yeah.
But $1 in 2025, it doesn't buy you a whole lot.
No, it doesn't.
So what do? They could try to, like, stretch that dollar as far as possible. Maybe find, like, the cheapest street vendor or something.
Yeah.
But our challenger goes for a different strategy,
What's that?
bartering.
Oh, interesting.
It's like a skill that's been used for centuries,
Mm.
But I feel like it's kind of overlooked these days.
Yeah, in our modern world, we're so used to just, swiping a card or paying with our phones.
Exactly. But when you're facing limited resources like this,
Yeah.
the ability to negotiate to trade it can be, like, super valuable.
You got to get creative.
Right. So in this case, our challenger approaches a market vendor who's selling, like, day-old bread.
Okay.
A whole loaf is definitely out of reach, with just $1.
Yeah.
But with a little smooth talk and a little charm,
A little bit of desperation, maybe.
maybe a dash of desperation.
Yeah.
They managed to trade that single dollar for half a loaf of bread. Half a loaf? Half a loaf? Not bad. Right.
I mean, it's not a feast, but
It's something.
it's fuel, it's sustenance, and,
It's a win.
it's definitely a win in this scenario.
It shows you, like, even with the bare minimum, you can still make something happen.
Exactly. Resourcefulness is key.
So breakfast is sorted.
Yeah.
They got their half a loaf of bread,
Okay.
but now they got to figure out how to navigate this sprawling city, without spending any more money.
That's the challenge, right?
Right. Public transport. Forget about it.
Too expensive.
Way too expensive taxis. Yeah. Right.
Out of the question.
So how do they get around? They got to get resourceful.
Okay.
And they take advantage of a free bike trial.
Oh, smart.
Right.
I love that.
Like those bike share programs where
Yeah.
you can, like, try it out for free for a certain amount of time.
Exactly. Taking advantage of those little loopholes.
Exactly. It's about spotting those opportunities
Yeah.
that other people might just walk right past.
Yeah, being observant.
Right. And it also shows how important transportation is in this challenge.
Well,
Absolutely, like, walking everywhere in a city,
exhausting.
exhausting, time-consuming.
And not practical if you're trying to make the most of your day.
Right. You got to cover ground efficiently if you're going to, like, achieve anything in those coming 4 hours.
And it makes me think about, like, in the real world, with resources becoming more limited,
Yeah.
like, think about rising costs, climate change, all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah.
How willing are we to, like, adapt and embrace those unconventional solutions?
It's food for thought, isn't it?
It is.
And speaking of food, by midday, our challenger's stomach is rumbling again.
Oh, no.
That half a loaf of stale bread?
Yeah.
It only lasts so long.
Not very long.
So they head downtown, hoping to find some free samples.
Free samples, classic survival tactic.
Classic. Like those try before you buy food trucks or those little like
The little tastes of heaven.
exact designed to entice you.
To spend more money.
But in this scenario,
They're a lifeline.
exactly, they're a lifeline. And you know what?
Did they find anything?
They managed to score a tiny taco bite.
A tiny taco bite.
A tiny taco bite. I mean, maybe not a 5-star meal.
No.
But hey, every little bit helps, right?
Every little bit counts.
But you can imagine, like, this whole experience is starting to take its toll.
Yeah, I bet.
They're physically and mentally drained. They're probably starting to get a little hangry.
Oh, for sure.
And they desperately need rest.
Okay, so where do they go?
Well, obviously, a hotel is completely out of the question.
Right, a $1 budget.
$1 budget.
Yeah.
So they decide to head to the public library.
Ah, a library.
Another free resource that I think a lot of us take for granted.
We do?
It's a haven of peace and quiet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they offer shelter, warmth, a chance to just like sit down and decompress.
Absolutely.
Our challenger manages to sneak in a quick nap
Okay.
in a comfy armchair.
Nice.
But unfortunately, a watchful security guard cuts their rest short.
Oh, no.
Back of the streets, they realize they need to get across town, which brings them face to face with that transportation hurdle again.
So how do they overcome it this time?
Well, that's the story for part 2.
I can't wait. All right, so remember, our challenger, they're stranded across town, need to get back, and only have their wits about them.
Yep. And it's getting late, the sun's starting to set, they're exhausted, and still haven't really eaten anything all day.
A half a loaf of bread and a tiny taco sample do not a meal make.
Not even close, but just when it seems like all hope is lost, they stumble upon a street musician, you know, one of those buskers.
Oh, yeah.
Playing for tips, and it's like a light bulb goes off in their head.
What do?
They approach the busker and strike up a conversation. You know, just chatting, being friendly.
Human connection.
Exactly. And then comes the big ask.
Yeah.
They explain their situation, their challenge, and that they need to get across town.
Bold move.
Very bold, and you wouldn't believe what happens next.
What?
The busker rummages through their bag and pulls out a spare bus token.
No way.
Yes way. And they offer to trade it for our challenger's $1.
Wow, that's incredible.
I know, right? Talk about kindness and empathy.
Seriously, that token is worth like twice the value of their dollar.
At least. But the busker sees the struggle. You know, sees that our challenger is genuinely in need.
It's a reminder that sometimes people are just good.
They are. And it really reinforces the power of human connection.
For sure, because in this scenario, social skills, compassion, they're just as valuable as any material resource.
More valuable even, because without that connection, they'd be stuck.
Absolutely stranded with no way to get back.
So thanks to the generosity of this random busker,
Okay.
our challenger is back on the move, riding the bus across the city feeling a glimmer of hope.
A small victory, but they're not out of the woods yet.
Not even close, because now they're completely out of cash, the sun has set, and night in the city is a whole different ballgame.
The stakes get higher, the dangers increase.
Exactly. And as darkness descends, the most urgent need, even more so than shelter, becomes food.
Makes sense. You can tough it out for a few hours without a roof over your head.
You can, but your body needs fuel to keep going.
Absolutely. And with zero money left, our challenger is pushed to the absolute limit.
Like, this is where the challenge takes a really dark turn.
Okay.
Imagine venturing into those dimly lit alleys behind restaurants.
Oh, no.
Hoping for a scrap, anything edible.
That's desperation.
Pure desperation, and that's the reality they're facing.
Wow. This is heavy.
It's a stark reminder of how precarious this whole situation is.
Right, because it's not about being picky or finding something tasty.
No, it's about sheer survival.
Finding anything to keep you going.
And, you know, it's not pretty, but our challenger ends up finding a half-eaten burger discarded in a dumpster.
Oh, gosh.
Not exactly appetizing, definitely not safe. But in that moment of desperation, it's fuel.
It's calories.
It's all that matters.
And it really makes you think, right, like what would any of us do in that situation?
I don't even want to imagine it.
It's a tough question, but it's one worth asking because for some people, this isn't a hypothetical challenge.
Right.
It's their reality.
And as uncomfortable as it is to confront that reality,
it's important that we do.
Absolutely. So with their hunger somewhat addressed, at least for the time being, the next hurdle is finding shelter for the night.
Another daunting task.
Because safe and warm spaces in a city,
especially when you're broke,
they're practically non-existent.
And I imagine our challenger is pretty much at the end of their rope at this point.
Oh, definitely exhausted, hungry.
Yeah.
Probably starting to feel the effects of that dumpster burger.
Oh, yeah.
But they keep going. They have to.
And where do they end up?
They end up seeking refuge on a park bench.
A park bench.
Yeah, using some old newspapers they found in a nearby bin for warmth.
Wow, it really paints a picture of vulnerability,
It does. Exposed to the elements, no real protection from the cold or the danger.
And it makes you realize how fortunate we are to have a safe and warm place to sleep at night.
It does.
Yeah.
Because for so many people, that's a luxury they can't afford.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So our challenger huddled on that park bench, trying to get some rest, surrounded by the noises of the city.
It's a far cry from the comfort most of us take for granted.
Yeah, and I can only imagine the mental toll it takes trying to fall asleep in that kind of environment.
The fear, the uncertainty, the constant awareness of your surroundings.
Gotta be exhausting.
Extremely. But they manage to get a few hours of sleep.
They have to. They've got another day ahead of them.
They do. And as dawn breaks, they emerge from their makeshift shelter.
Okay.
Maybe a little worse for wear, but they're alive.
They survive.
They survive 24 hours in the city on just a single dollar.
A testament to human resilience for sure.
It is. It's a story that really sticks with you,
It does. It makes you think about all the things we take for granted.
But it also raises a lot of questions about the systems we live in. It makes you wonder, like, if someone can barely survive for 24 hours on a single dollar, what does that say about our society?
The big question.
Like, are we doing enough to help those who are struggling?
I think it challenges us to look beyond just individual resourcefulness and consider like the bigger picture, the systemic factors at play.
Yeah, because it's not just about being clever or finding loopholes.
Yeah, it's about understanding why people are in these situations in the first place.
Right. And what can we do to create a society where everyone has a chance to thrive?
Exactly.
So I guess looking back at this challenge, the surviving on a dollar thing.
Yeah.
What worked, what didn't, and what can we all learn from this experience?
Well, I think we saw firsthand the power of bartering.
Yeah.
Like the ability to negotiate, to trade, that's a valuable skill.
And not just for survival situations, right?
No, in any situation where resources are limited.
Right. Being able to think outside the box
Nah.
to find creative solutions.
Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget that busker, the one who traded the bus token for $1.
Yeah, that was a real turning point in the challenge.
It was, because it wasn't just about the token itself.
No.
It was about the human connection.
Yeah.
The empathy.
That feeling of hope.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It showed our challenger that they weren't alone in their struggle.
And it highlights the importance of community.
Yeah, of looking out for each other.
And also just being aware of the resources that are available.
Right, like libraries,
Yeah.
community centers, food banks.
Places that can provide support for people in need.
This deep dive has been, really eye-opening for me.
Me too.
It's humbling to realize how much we take for granted.
Yeah, and how easy it is to get caught up in our own lives and forget about those who are struggling.
So what can our listeners do to take these insights and turn them into action?
I think it starts with awareness, recognizing our own privilege, being grateful for what we have.
And acknowledging the struggles of others.
Exactly, and then taking action.
Yeah, like what kind of action?
It could be volunteering your time,
Okay.
donating to organizations that combat poverty, even just having conversations about these issues with friends and family.
Yeah. Yeah, because even small actions can make a difference, right?
Absolutely.
Like maybe buying a meal for someone who's hungry, or offering a listening ear to someone who needs to talk.
It's about fostering that sense of community.
Recognizing that we're all in this together.
Exactly. We have a responsibility to create a more just and equitable world.
Well said. I think this deep dive has given us all a lot to think about.
It has.
What would you be willing to do to survive on just $1?
That's a tough one.
It is. What resources would you turn to? What choices would you make?
I guess we'll leave that for our listeners to ponder.
Exactly. Share your thoughts, your ideas, maybe even your own survival tips and tricks in the comments below.
Let's keep this conversation going.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends.
Spread the word.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a real journey.